So let me first say Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon. My thanks to the MC prior hand for the introductions clearly. Just to clarify, in case anybody's wondering which parallel session you're in, currently you are in session 3, stream 2, where we'll be talking about structuring green and sustainable sukuk. We will inshallah be covering aspects of green sukuk structuring from both a policy framework, Shariah, as well as the nitty-gritty of sukuk structuring itself. So as introduction, my name is Rizal IL-Ehzan. I am currently with Alliance Islamic Bank. Our organization's core focus is to mobilize capital and community to ensure economic inclusion and promote positive impact to communities and the ecology in which we operate. We recently acquired our sister firm's capital market business, our sister firm being Alliance Investment Bank, where capital market services towards sustainability themed projects have already been, we've done several of those. And so we'll be looking to scale up some of those opportunities as well. So clearly for me, at the very least, I'll be very keenly interested to hear the inputs and insights from the various panelists today with regard to sukuk structuring in the green and sustainable space. Today, I have the absolute distinct honor of moderating a discussion on green sukuk with what I can only describe as an august panel of eminent experts and professionals on the subject matter. So I'd like to welcome the panelists. First off, I'd like to welcome Yang Berusia Prof. Dr. Engku Rabiah Adawiah. Prof. Dr. is basically a prominent Shariah scholar in both the Malaysian and global stages. She's a member of the Shariah Advisory Council for both the Central Bank as well as the Securities Commission, but also for the Labuan Offshore Financial Services Authority as well as the Employee Provident Fund. She is a professor with the International Islamic University Malaysia Institute of Islamic Banking and Finance. Amongst other things, I think she's been listed numerous times in the list of influential women in Islamic finance. Recently, she's ranked as the second most influential women in Islamic finance for the year 2020. So welcome, Prof. Dr. Engku. I'd also like to introduce Ibu Dwi Irianti. Ibu Dwi is currently the Director of Islamic Financing at the Directorate General of Budget Financing and Risk Management, Ministry of Finance for the Republic of Indonesia. She's clearly an experienced hand in the field of Indonesia's capital market regulations. She was intimately involved in the drafting of Indonesia's sovereign Islamic securities or Sukuk Negara law and the various implementing regulations since 1994. She's also currently the President Director of Sukuk Negara Issuing Company, which is responsible for issuing the various ROI global sukuks. And she's also an active member of the Indonesian Association of Islamic Economists. Welcome, Ibu.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. And finally, not least, of course, is Yang Berusia Ayaz Ismail, who's the Director of Wholesale Banking at CIMB Islamic in Malaysia. He covers Islamic investment banking transactions, and since 2012, he's been involved in various groundbreaking and award-winning ringgit and non-ringgit sukuk offerings. So collectively and individually, they have played big roles and contributed meaningfully to the propagation of green as well as ESG sukuk. Perhaps to kick this off, I'd like to invite the panelists to provide a brief overview of their involvement in green sukuk. And I'll start off with Prof. Engku. Perhaps you can give us a taste of your experience thus far in propagating green sukuks in the country.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Rizal, for a very generous introduction. I hope the connection is okay because I have some stability with my connection. So I hope you can hear me well.
So far, it sounds good.
Yeah, just now I was just kicked out of the room and then just rejoined back. Okay, so basically my experience with the green and also sustainable sukuk it's not really hands-on because I've not been involved in the structuring itself, but more in terms of my research as well as with regards to my own interest in the subject. And I have studied a number of green as well as sustainable sukuk issuances. I think they are here to stay because of the trend in the global global trend. There's actually more awareness towards sustainability about the climate change, and especially as we move towards the younger generations, they are much more concerned about sustainability, climate issues, etc., as compared to the older generation. And I'm quite happy with that because as just quite I think coincidence that we listened to the verses of the Quran in the morning for the opening ceremony. Basically, the reciter actually cited the verse in Surah Al-Rum, and I think about the last verse about Surah Al-Rum, verse 41, which talks about how actually mischief as well as corruption happens on the land and as well as in the sea and in the oceans as a result of the doings of mankind. So we have seen a lot of harm being done to the ecology, to the environment because of perhaps overconsumption and also greed in order to get monetary returns. So we are trying to reverse that damage to the environment through perhaps one of that would be the sustainable investments and also sustainable and green sukuk as well. So we are looking towards using the proceeds of the sukuk and the liquidity for purposes which is having positive impact to the environment. And we're talking about sustainability, not only to the environment, but also to the society as a whole. So that would be something that I'm looking forward to discuss, especially in more detail with regards to what are the issues, the challenges, and also the way forward to further enhance and promote green and sustainable sukuk. So that's my few cents for the introduction.
Thank you, Prof. I'm looking forward to that as well. We'll move on to Ibu Dwi. I'm sure Ibu Dwi has a lot of war stories to tell about Sukuk Mikara and the like. Ibu Dwi, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Rizal. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. As introduction from Mr. Rizal, that I have involved in developing sovereign sukuk from the very beginning, even before sukuk itself issued in 2008, because we have to prepare for developing the sukuk law, sukuk negara law, because as you know that Indonesia is following civil law regime, so we have to develop the sukuk law. Ongoing process in 2008, since sukuk law enacted, we start issue sukuk, our debut sukuk in domestic market with size only 4.7 trillion IDR, so equivalent 300 million US dollar, I guess. And we continue developing the sukuk structure. We now have for structure akad, wakalah, ijaroh sell and leaseback, ijaroh asset to be leased, and ijaroh al-khadamat. And also we develop sukuk market infrastructure and legal documents, of course. And then for now, we already have innovative product such as retail sukuk, including green retail sukuk, and then hedge fund sukuk. We issue green sukuk in global market for times and for years, and tremendously that we tap more and more green investor. The latest issuance we grabbed about 57% of green investor, and for the 3 first issuance green sukuk we issue with 5 years tenor, and the latest one we jumped to 30 years tenor, and we got about 4.5 4.5 times oversubscribed. So not only that, on the retail green Sukuk, that once we issue since 2019, and the latest one we just issued last month, and the response from domestic investor, especially for millennial investor, individual investor, it's very good because almost 50% of the investor coming from millennial. So that one's the introduction from me about my involvement for the developing green Sukuk in Indonesia.
Thank you, Ibu. We're going to be delving much deeper into your experience with Sukuk Negara in a bit. But before that, I think I'll move on to Encik Ayaz Ismail from CIMB. Perhaps you can regale us with your own experiences with green Sukuks.
Thank you very much, Rizal. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon to my fellow panelists and also to those who are listening in. Yes, my name is Ayaz, and over the past few years, I've been involved in a number of green and sustainable Sukuk transactions that have come to the market, a few in the Malaysian market, but more notably global Sukuk issuances that I was involved in were the government of Indonesia's green Sukuk, where I had the privilege of working with Ibu Dwi. And I'm looking forward to her sharing the intricacies of this transaction, which has set a good benchmark in the global markets. And additionally, I was also involved in the government of Malaysia's sustainability Sukuk, which was issued in April this year. So that's by way of introduction, Rizal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayaz. Very good. So in this discussion, I'll be seeking the views from each of the panelists, unique perspectives, basically. So Prof. Engku will probably give perspective from a Shariah scholar as well as regulator perspective. And also I note the fact that Prof. Engku is also a thought leader when it comes to social finance. So we might be able to weave some of that into the discussion today. Second is Ibu Dwi. I think clearly your perspective from a government policymaker perspective is going to be key, but clearly also from an issuer perspective, that's going to be valuable for us as well. Encik Ayaz, I mean, clearly you're on the front lines of this, you're the man in the trenches, so we'd like to hear your thoughts with regard to, as a structuring specialist, what are the key perspectives, unique perspectives that you have with regard to green Sukuks. Yeah? Now, as we go along, if there are questions from the audience, please feel free to post them in the chat or Q&A function. But what we do right now is we're going to dive straight into several questions we want to address. Just as a context, I think one of the things, this has partly been addressed in session 2, but just to provide context, what do we see as the outlook and opportunity size for green Sukuks and sustainable Sukuks, and what do we see as being the key drivers of that? So I'd like to pose this first to Prof. Engku.
Engku, unmute your mic, please.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay, sorry. Sorry for that glitch. Okay, so I didn't realize that I've not unmuted myself. So thank you very much, Rizal, for that question. So basically, when we look at the outlook and also opportunity for green and sustainable Sukuk, we have seen that in terms of the growth of the green and sustainable Sukuk, I mean, there's been a lot of growth. However, comparatively speaking, if you compare that to the conventional green and sustainable bonds, of course, we are still very small. And that is, I think, partly contributed to perhaps the lack of awareness, both on the demand side as well as the supply side, about the features of green and sustainable Sukuk. So much so that the takers and also those interested to participate in such structures maybe not as much as we are hoping them to be. Let's say, for example, we look at the investor side. Some parts of the world, I have been reading some news as well as some reports on this, especially like in the GCC. The concern about ESG and CSR is still picking up. And in the past, they were so much about the normal bottom lines about rate of returns rather than non-monetary considerations in the like of environment or social impact and things like that. So, but the awareness is growing, and we have listened just now in the previous session, the speakers alluding to the fact that there is increasing awareness. But given the track record in the past, we have seen that there is perhaps less awareness as compared to perhaps the Southeast Asian region, like perhaps in Malaysia and Indonesia. The awareness towards this is perhaps more, but it's not yet adequate to actually spur a very strong growth in that sector or segment. And in our region, I think the more lack of awareness is perhaps on the supply side, on the issuer side. I think not many issuer understands what are the requirements of green sukuk, for example, that they would require to have a green framework, they require to have an external reviewer and things like that. So this can be a bit technical, and without necessary education and skill set and awareness among the issuers themselves, they may actually miss the opportunity to actually issue a green or sustainable sukuk, despite the fact that maybe the proceeds of the issuance that they're issuing actually is meant for something that may qualify to be a green or sustainable issuance, had they known about the requirements and had they been aware about the framework for these types of sukuk. So there are some missed opportunities that we see among the issuers because of lack of awareness on their part. So this is the thing that I think we can actually further enhance in the future to actually further grow the green and sustainable sukuk market. And in addition to that, given that the Islamic social finance space, how we actually propagate green and sustainable sukuk and segments to, let's say, the very traditional Islamic social finance segments like the wakaf and the zakah and also sedekah aspects. Have we talked to the State Religious Council, for example, in Malaysia, or maybe other places, the Ministry of Awqaf, whether we can have or tap from the wakaf assets to actually fund for sustainable as well as green initiatives. So that actually can potentially put another source of support in the long run for green and sustainable sukuk. So those are my few ideas at the moment.
So thank you, Prof. I'm going on to Ibu Dwi. I mean, we've heard recently about the new carbon tax regulations in Indonesia, albeit it's on a slow and low approach. And perhaps maybe you can give some insights as to the wisdom of that approach, one. And also secondly, with regard to whether it kind of created an increased demand for green sukuks amongst issuers within the Indonesian market.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Rizal. Yes, that Indonesia already give new tax for our domestic market issuance, decreased from 15% to 10%. Hope that one is incentive for the investor to buy and invest in sukuk more. And we already see the impact of the decreasing the tax. So we see, especially from the retail sukuk, the demand is very huge. For example, for the latest issuance on green, our target only 5 trillion IDR, and we give 17 days for offering time period, but only 5 days already sold out. That's showing the demands in the market for sukuk getting more and more, especially because our latest one is green retail sukuk. So, but of course, we still need to do observations whether the greenness of the instrument get more investor on that, or because liquidity is oversubscribed there. It's very ample on the market. So we need to observe of that. But for the market, if we see Islamic financial capital market has grown tremendously since the first Sukuk issuance in 2001. The international Sukuk market issuance volume in the last 5 years averaging more than $25 billion per year. While supply remain demanded by sovereign issuers, the trend is moving as several corporate issuers look to enter the undersupplied Sukuk market through opportunistic trades. In terms of demand, significant growth in asset managed under Islamic principle provides an avenue in further developing Islamic financial market. And globally sustainable fixed income instrument witnesses rapid progression on the back of both investor demand for ESG-related paper as well as issuer entering ESG market in supporting their move to a sustainable development. And from $102 billion issuance in 2010, the market year to date is 2021 has reached $975 billion. That one is representing 64% compound annual growth rate. And ESG integration into equity capital markets also shows strong momentum with valuation and investment in green technology such as electric car is higher compared to conventional technology. And on ESG level, issuance in the Sukuk market following up success on Indonesia Green Sukuk, we are excited to observe other sovereigns, supranatural and agency issuers tapping ESG Sukuk market, such as government of Malaysia through its sustainability Sukuk in 2021. And Islamic Development Bank through COVID-19 response Sukuk in 2020. Yes, to issue green Sukuk, there is a big effort as Ms. Engku mentions that we need to develop like a green framework, and then after our post issuance, that the very hard work for us that we have to provide such impact report. That's very challenging for us. So I think to the last things for obligation for the issuers make the issuers reluctant to issue a green format. And in terms of investor, we are seeing numerous investors incorporating ESG consideration into their investment decision. One of the key initiatives in principle of responsible investing, the conceptual framework behind undertaking responsible investment or sustainable investment originates from Europe and US, and now with the global momentum of ESG investing, it is getting more popular in Asia as well. An increasing number of organizations from Asia start to sign the PRE from Asia, especially Japan and China. We also observe an alliance toward net zero being established among issuance companies, asset management, and banking industry. These activities reflect commitment from investor community in developing and managing their asset through sustainable lens, along with increasing push from investor on ESG. Issuers should be incentivized to integrate ESG into their policy and issue ESG label paper to respond to this demand and tap the increasing liquidity pool of ESG funds. And one more thing, I think our experience in issuing green retail Sukuk, I think can be followed by other countries to see, to increase awareness of the people to give responsible for our globe in the future. That's my view, Pak Rizal.
Thank you, Ibu Dwi. Clearly, we can take a leaf from some of the experiences we have with Sukuk Negara and the issuances of green Sukuk. I think what's impressive is that these issuances actually happen on a quarterly basis in different denominations as well. So I think that's something we could probably take a leaf from. Yes, just moving along to you, right? Let's get to the nitty-gritty of stuff. When we talk about key considerations when we're structuring green and sustainability Sukuk, what are those things?
Right. Thank you, Rizal. When it comes to Sukuk, one of the crucial elements is, of course, the utilization of Sukuk proceeds. It must be Shariah compliant. And when it comes to green and sustainable Sukuk, it must be for eligible projects that are green and sustainable. And in most cases, green and sustainable projects would be Shariah compliant. I say in most cases, it's probably true for all cases, but there will always be exceptions. Hence, what you see is it's a natural fit. Even if an issuer did not set out to do so, the use of green or sustainability proceeds would be by default Shariah compliant. And actually, Prof. Engku mentioned earlier, in some cases, the use of proceeds would be green or sustainable, but missed opportunity in actually designing it or structuring it as a green or sustainable Sukuk. So this intersection, the synergies between green and sustainable with Sukuk are also apparent, and this was alluded to by some of our speakers earlier in the day. Now, when it comes to key considerations, when talking about green and sustainability Sukuk, there was, when we talk about the frameworks that are available out there, and the good thing that we can see in the market today is there are a number of well-developed frameworks that issuers can refer to and that they can use. And these are types of frameworks which are accepted by a large number of investors out there. Hence, we can see that, with advisors advising the issuers in the right way to be following some of these frameworks out there. For example, the International Capital Market Association framework. This is quite, the ASEAN Capital Market Forum as well. They have come up with the series of green bond standards and social bond standards, sustainability bond standards, which are based on what the ICMA has issued. We have the CBI or Climate Bond Initiative standards. In Malaysia, Securities Commission Malaysia, they have their Sustainable and Responsible Investment Sukuk framework. So we have all these frameworks that are in place, which can be used by issuers for, depending on which jurisdiction they are in and what the purposes are, and well received, well accepted by the investors out there. So these frameworks state out clearly how you select projects, how the funds must be allocated, what are the requirements for reporting, and then they also state typically what are the nice to have. For example, second party opinions and perhaps verification. So what we see is the infrastructure has developed to a certain extent where it's quite conducive for issuers to consider issuing green and sustainable papers.
Thank you, Ayaz. Quite enlightening. Prof. Engku, just from a regulator perspective or Shariah scholar perspective, what would be the expectations when it comes to structuring green and sustainable Sukuks?
I think the main expectation would be that it would have to meet the level, okay? Because we say Sukuk, they has to be Shariah compliant, and we say green, and it has to follow the green definition of green as given by the standard setters, like Ayaz mentioned about there's a global standard by ICMA. And then we have also the regional level at Asian Capital Market Forum, and then we have also Malaysian Sukuk framework at the national level. Even Indonesia, they have their, I think, regulation on issuing in terms of green bonds. So the greenness of the green has to be verified based on the standards that is recognized by the investors worldwide. I think Japan also, they have their green bonds guidelines. So apart from that, of course, talking about Shariah compliance, the most important thing in terms of Shariah compliance, I think there have been a number of discussions earlier with regards to IFRS Standard 59. But apart from that, I think the main thing is actually to look at the structure. the structuring in terms of the contract used. When I scanned through the green sukuk that has been issued, our first one, Tadau Sukuk in Malaysia, it was actually the first ever green sukuk issued, but it was by a corporation. Small ticket was about 250 million ringgit. So when you translate into US dollar, it's not that big. But it was actually a groundbreaking transaction. And the structure used was also quite unique because they use istisna ijara, which is not that frequently used after that, because istisna ijara has their own structure with their own risk elements. So during the construction of the solar panels, they have istisna, and after which there will be ijara, there will be generative returns to the sukuk holders, right? So that is in terms of Shariah compliance, and it has to meet the green criteria that it will have positive impact in terms of renewable energy. Okay, but apart from that, I've seen a lot of the sukuk, green sukuk actually use the wakalah structure, which is more flexible. So under the wakalah, you can have various contracts. Can be a commodity murabaha. It can also be other types of contract, ijara, for example. And the most recent sustainability sukuk that Malaysian government had issued, and that was said to be the maiden sovereign sustainability sukuk, which combines green positive impact as well as social impact elements. That one is also unique because it used a very unique set of asset class as the underlying asset for the sukuk, because they were using travel vouchers for using the LRT, MRT networks in Malaysia. And that asset is deemed to be by some segments to be more sustainable, because there will always be people using the LRT, MRT, monorails and whatnot. So that is the nature of the asset class. So from the Shariah perspective, of course, the asset class must be Shariah compliant. Of course, talking about using of the transportation will be Shariah compliant. There's no issue on that. So the main Shariah concerns would be on that, verifying that there is Shariah compliance in the transaction, and that Shariah compliance is being observed throughout. So if you're talking about tradability of the sukuk later, so if your sukuk is represented mostly by debt, so you have, if you are following AOFI, then you have to follow that 50%, 51% non-debt, and only 49% debt assets. Okay, so it shouldn't be majority murabaha. It should be tagged or coupled with, in the case of the sustainable sukuk, coupled with the underlying assets in the form of the rights to the vouchers for the travel on the monorails and LRT, MRT. So those are the main considerations that we are looking at. I would also like to touch a bit on the other aspects that have been highlighted earlier in terms of the technical aspects of green and also sustainable sukuk, is about the pre-issuance as well as the post-issuance obligations, which is perhaps more onerous as compared to the normal sukuk, because you have to ensure not only in terms of Shariah compliance, pre and also post, pre-continuance and also post-issuance, but for the green and sustainability, use of proceeds must be used not only for Shariah compliance purposes, but also for clear environmental benefit, which is not only beneficial, but also measurable and quantifiable, because post-issue you need to do impact reporting. So in the impact reporting, normally it's expected that they're going to give quantitative as well as qualitative elements in terms of the actual impact of that intervention. For example, you're looking at reducing carbon emissions, so how much carbon emission has been avoided, what are the quantity of the clean energy generated. Okay, so it's very quite rigorous in terms of its reporting, and also there's additional audit process on the green as well as sustainable part of it. Okay, thank you.
You brought up an interesting point with regard to some of the disclosures. Yes, so clearly when it comes to green and sustainable sukuk, we kind of have to do a bit more in order to structure this properly. So it comes with additional costs, clearly, with all those additional disclosures, yes? So I'm just wondering, I think from Ibu Dwi's perspective, given that she's done this issuance before, given the additional costs and disclosures that come with issuing green sukuk, is there necessarily a price advantage that comes with the issuance of green sukuks that kind of compensates for the additional costs?
Maybe before Ibu Dwi goes into that, I just want to highlight, because you're raising the issue of cost. So some countries actually give incentives for that. Like countries like Malaysia, we give, I think, 90% coverage of the costs, the additional cost for the green or sustainability reporting and review. And Singapore give 100% as help or support for that. Same goes for Hong Kong. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Prof. Ibu Dwi, from your perspective? Sorry, Ibu, you might need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. Of course, based on our experience, issuing 4 times in global market and 3 times in domestic market for green sukuk and green retail sukuk, I think for the cost is not that very big, but the important things that we have to be take into considerations to the investor that we ask for the price benefit is the effort, not the cost, but the effort, how we have to provide the impact report. As Professor Engku mentions, we have to calculate the environment impact and social impact, how much for each projects that we selected and we utilize as underlying should be able to be calculated, the impact, how much the projects can decrease the carbon emissions. So we have to select the right projects. The right project, it means we have 9 eligible green projects based on our green framework, which is 3 of them got setting dark green, which is give more impact on the decreasing of the carbon emissions. So we select for the dark green first. After that, we select to medium to dark green. We have for now selected projects that give a big impact, such as renewable energy and then sustainable transportations and waste management. We have actually green building, green tourism, but as we know that the impact not that big enough, so we skip for that projects. So the important things for us to encourage other issuers to issue green bond or green sukuk, we need to get a greenium for price benefit. So I always ask for Pak Ayaz to push the investor how they can give us the benefit from our effort. For now, we see that from 4 times issuance, we haven't seen yet for the price benefit. But the price benefit is not only to substitute our extra cost, but the most important is to price our effort for the impact. And I think I would like to show to the audience that I think we need to convince the investor that from our experience, we got more and more participations from green investor because we already submit and publish our reporting with audited one. So every single report, we ask for the auditor, independent auditor to audit our report. So to make ensure to investor that we manage our green Sukuk proceeds come 100% go to the green eligible project.
Rizal, if I may just come in at this point.
Sure.
Ibu Dwi was talking about basically the value proposition for investors and issuers.
I was just going to touch on that. I was going to pose it to you as well. So thank you for picking it up.
But Ayaz always asks me, the government of Indonesia in finding a green investor, new green investor.
That's right. So the question is, do green or sustainability sukuk give superior returns to investors, or are they more cost efficient for the issuers? I would not be in a position to answer this question. It requires a lot of study, of course. But having said that, the returns are qualitative points, and there are many quantitative points as well. Sorry, the other way around, that make green and sustainability sukuk valuable for investors and issuers. And this includes the regulatory environment and the investment climate, questions of diversification, expectations of your stakeholders, and also the influence and the actions of investors and issuers have in doing green and sustainable sukuk. So if you just give me a moment, if I could expand a little bit on that. There are a combination of factors which give value for investors when they invest in green and sustainable sukuk. First, as I mentioned earlier, these are some external factors. The governments and the regulators are pushing the ESG agenda in numerous ways. In some jurisdictions, they're already well on the path of achieving their Paris Agreement commitments. And this requires the entire ecosystem of stakeholders to be on board, some sooner than others. Next, internally, investors, stakeholders are beginning to pay more attention as well to the portfolios of these investors. Where is their money being invested? Is it supporting activities that contribute to or mitigate climate change? These stakeholders are beginning to ask questions related to ESG, and the expectation is clear. Stakeholders are moving more in the direction of ESG. Another point to note is diversification. We had Islamic, many investors diversified into Islamic. We had ethical, many investors diversified into ethical. And now we have ESG. So it's a logical move to diversify into ESG. And many of the investor groups have ownership structures that go beyond borders. And the influence of jurisdictions that are more advanced in the ESG space will be felt in the other jurisdictions where ESG is in its early stages. And this too creates the investor demand that could spur market activity. And then a final point here, the COVID-19 pandemic as well has made the world reconsider what's important. And this, I believe, contributes to investor demand, issuer value proposition for ESG papers.
Thank you, Ayaz. So are we seeing this translate into a considerable pipeline of potential issuers in the green sukuk space? Is that what you're seeing on the ground already?
Well, I can share the interest amongst issuers to structure the programs to allow them to issue green and sustainable papers. That is definitely increasing. There could be a certain element of waiting for the right time, waiting for the markets to mature a little bit more, and maybe a little bit more clarity on certain regulations perhaps. But yes, we are definitely seeing movement, and we should be seeing more issuances coming to the market very soon. The general feeling is that the development of the green and sustainable bond, and therefore green and sustainable sukuk, has been on a very accelerated trajectory.
Thanks, Ayaz. So I think we're in the final minutes of our session. I just want to ask a quick question with regard to the parallels between the propagation of green and sustainable sukuk and the experience we've had in the past years with regard to evolving Islamic finance, basically. So I just want to pose this question to the panelists, probably start off with Prof. Engku as well, to provide sort of like the helicopter view on this. Are there learnings that we can take from how we approach the evolution of Islamic finance globally, basically, and apply it here towards, scaling up and propagating green and sustainable sukuk?
Well, obviously, we have lessons to be learned, especially with regards to adding layers of requirements. Because when we do Islamic finance, we are adding layers of requirements. I mean, the market has get used to that. So when we add another layer in terms of green sustainability, so they know this is something that they have to follow, just like when they have to follow in terms of Shariah compliance, now they have to follow in terms of green, in terms of sustainability criteria. Okay, that's one. And then for Sharia compliance, for Islamic finance, we have different standards, global, regional, national. The same goes for green and sustainability. The standards are still moving. I mean, there's no, I mean, there are the global standards, but we customize that, adapt it in order to suit Asian, and then from Asia to Malaysia, because some countries are very much into palm oil, very much into oil and gas. It will be difficult to apply the global standard strictly, you know, so they have to do some kind of adaptation, just like when we have the different Sharia interpretations based on the different scenario on the ground at each particular country. Okay. And then the other thing is about seeing to believe, you know, they see that it has been shown to be viable, and then people join the bandwagon. So we have seen experiences of green and sustainable Sukuk that have paved the way, and they show that it is doable, and it has shown impact. So that's why we see people are queuing to actually issue more. Just like to give the example of Malaysia, we had in April this year, I think our government had issued the sovereign sustainability sukuk for the climate, as well as for the social well-being. So because of the success of that issuance, I think we had the 800 million tranche, the 10-year tenure, and another 500 million USD tranche for the 30 years tenure, right? So I think just last month, the Malaysian Minister of Finance announced that we plan to issue a further 10 billion ringgit of green sukuk next year, green as well as sustainable sukuk, where he clearly mentioned that this 10 billion ringgit will be channeled to social and or environmentally friendly projects. So that would actually be very much in line with the Malaysian commitment under the Paris Agreement. I mean, that's one thing that is hanging over our heads in most countries as well. And we have also the Malaysia, we have the Shared Prosperity Vision 2030, which requires reduced inequality and better social protection and better social security. So we would require funding for that purpose. So at least in the Malaysian show, I would think that with the Paris Agreement and also our shared prosperity vision, sustainability and green sukuk will actually be leading the way in terms of the parity by the government, and regionally and also globally. I think with the recent COP26 and all the commitments that have been made, I would think that green will be the way forward together with sustainability.
Absolutely. Thank you, Prof. Engku. Ibu Dwi, just perhaps final words on this with regard to advice to potential issuers out there. What would be some of your key points key advice that you give to, you know, aspiring issuers who want to go into green sukuk or sustainable sukuk?
Yeah, before that, I would like to inform you that now Indonesia just leverage our framework, green framework. Now in 2021, we amend our framework, not only focus on green, but we also cover for blue sukuk and as well as for social sukuk. And for social sukuk, Indonesia already start with issuing cash wakaf link sukuk. I think all of you already know. In 2020, we start issue twice through private placement and for retail cash wakaf link sukuk. And in this year also, we continue issue cash wakaf link sukuk retail. And I believe that we will continue to issue both green and social sukuk. About blue sukuk, of course, we still observe on that because you know that Indonesia 63% consists of water, right? consists of C. So is it potential for us to issue blue sukuk? And for GCC, GSS, Green Social and Sustainability Sukuk is aligned with Islamic finance concept as both promote social justice and inclusions. We know that. And we do not see divergence and high trends for Islamic structuring and Shariah considerations with the sustainability instrument or sukuk, but we see rather harmony in implementing GSS concept into Islamic structuring as reflected in Indonesia Green Sukuk transactions, which obtain Shariah pronouncement not only from National Shariah Board, but we also got pronouncement from international Islamic scholars. I think we need to invite other countries to issue, not only in global market, we encourage other issuers to issue green retail sukuk and Islamic or social Islamic sukuk such cash coupling sukuk. Why should retail sukuk? Because we can increase awareness from the community for the people to take responsibility for our environment, for our better future in life.
Okay, thank you, Bidwi. I think I've been informed that we're going to close out this room pretty soon. So I guess I was going to ask you one more question, but unfortunately we're out of time. Yeah. So I really appreciate the conversation we had today. I'm sure even though we've reached the end of this session, time-wise, the conversation will continue thereafter. I'd like to thank the panelists for the inputs and insights that have been provided throughout this session. On behalf of the organizers, panelists, and myself, I hope you have benefited from this shared wisdom and knowledge afforded by the conversation we had today. I thank the panelists for their views. I thank you again for your attendance and participation. And with that, I'd just like to transfer this back to the Master of Ceremonies. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Rizal, Prof, Engku, and Ayaz.
Thank you very much for the nice sharing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.